Okay, testing. We are back with the Bohemian Grove Part 2. I didn't expect a lot of people to watch it, so this is Part 2. I'm gonna get into it really fast. I just gotta make sure where I left off, and like somewhere like hour 20, hour close to here. If you want to watch the first part of this video, it's on my channel. I live streamed it. I'm going to be getting into the second part right now. If my power cuts off, then I'll let you guys, like, you'll know. But if this loads, close this out, this out. Let me get this loading.
This is America's movie to kill, right?
It was
King used Boys Town as a source of young boys for his business and for sex and drug.
successfully. When an institution like that gets contaminated, purposes of abusing children instead of protecting children, then you better, if you got any decency at all, do something about it, or at least get it cleared up.
John DeCamp lays the blame for the contamination of Boys Town on the one-time leader of the National Black Republican Council, Larry King.
Larry King was the fastest rising black star in the entire Republican Party of the United States during all of the 1980s. And he was also one of the most evil individuals in this country in terms of being a dealer of children, in terms of being a thief, 40 million that they documented he stole, and in terms of using and compromising and corrupting one after another politician.
The base for his network was a small People's Bank in Omaha, Nebraska, the Franklin Federal Credit Union. Larry King was its general manager. King courted the leaders of Omaha's wealthy business district. Banks, industry, and charities placed millions of dollars in King's hands. From 1979, Larry King developed close commercial ties to Boys Town, and Boys Town youngsters were sent to work for his companies. King used Boys Town as a source of young boys for his business and for sex and drug orgies. Paul Banassi was a victim of King's abuse. He was also sent by King to lure Boys Town youngsters off campus.
We used to just drive around and go up toward the home as we used to do some of the scavenger hunts with picking up some of the kids. You know, just kind of win their confidence, become friends with them for a while. Start inviting them to the parties. The kids were 10 years old or older.
In 1986, King's plundering of Boys Town was reported by staff to the chief executive, Father Val Peter. Despite the investigation, Larry King remained free to feed his pedophilic parties with child victims. But in 1988, a routine review brought the Boys Town cases to the attention of Nebraska's State Foster Care Review Board.
And the information presented to the Foster Care Review Board, either via the telephone reports, the personal reports, or the reports we reviewed, Larry King's name was consistently present as someone that the youth were making allegations against. I mean, I turned that information over to authorities, and nothing happened. I would say we handed over at least a foot-high amount of material. Generally speaking, the allegations were ignored.
Omaha police now accept that Larry King may have been abusing children.
Morning, Roberta.
Those perpetrators named by the children formed a ring of rich and powerful pedophiles in Omaha. Men from industry, politics, the media, even the police. Besides Larry King, ringleaders were department store billionaire Alan Baer and the celebrity columnist of the Omaha World Herald newspaper, Peter Citron. Larry King's political and business empire grew. He courted the Republican Party nationally and plundered Franklin's accounts to finance a luxury lifestyle of limousines, private planes and palatial homes, 3 in Omaha and 1 in Washington, D.C. Franklin's records show he spent $10 million on jewelry, flowers and private planes. And his lavish spending bought him a charmed life.
Larry King was constantly heralded, cheered, applauded in the news media as the great businessman that's helping the poor people, the black community of Omaha.
But King's extravagance attracted the attention of the Internal Revenue Service. As a result, on April the 11th, 1988, the Franklin Credit Union was raided and closed by the FBI. King was arrested, and a federal investigation showed he'd stolen $40 million from Franklin. But the FBI's inquiries were secret, and evidence of King's sex ring was quickly covered up.
I received a phone call on the floor of the legislature. The caller did not identify himself, but he said, "Lauren, you do not want to have an investigation of the Franklin Federal Credit Union." And I asked who I was speaking to, and they said, "That doesn't matter, but you shouldn't have that investigation." And I said, "Well, why not?" He said, "It will reach to the highest levels of the Republican Party, and we're both good Republicans."
The night before we testified before the legislative committee, I did receive a phone call at home that said, "If you speak, you won't live to regret it."
Ormiston and Caradori recorded their new witnesses on videotape. A victim of abuse since he was 8, Paul Benassi was present at many of Larry King's sex parties.
Media personality Peter Citron procured some of his victims from Boys Town.
The kids he liked were mainly around the age of probably about 8 and 13. It was mainly fondling and oral sex with them. He did have some anal sex, but he usually did that with the older kids.
Alan Bear was a sick. Didn't care, wanted sex, nasty, I don't even know if you can call it sex, and take it any way he can get it, pay for it, he liked to, but if he had to take it by force, he would. Larry King was the same kind of sick Alan Bear was, except Larry King was more violent, more sure of himself, I mean, I would, see him a 10-year-old boy in the until he bled, and just pull out and stop, and push him down, and then go out and meet with decent people.
King would also provide underage girls for abuse. Alicia Owen was 15 when she attended her first party. Alan Bear and Larry King frequently hosted the child sex parties in penthouse apartments at the Twin Towers luxury block.
A lot of it was me handcuffed with my hands behind my head and my feet tied, and doing different things.
What do you mean?
Sometimes there'd be a guy straddling over my face.
Okay.
Most of the time, Larry King took pictures quite a bit during that time.
I know it's difficult.
I don't know.
Okay. And Alicia, you're a victim. And at a young age, let's go off camera for a minute.
We were appalled. It was incredible. It's incredible what these kids went through, I think.
I was shocked when I walked in. There was a kid, I would say about 15 years old, out in the middle of the room. One guy was standing in front of him. He was bent over, and the other guy was like reaching under him, playing with his nipples, while a guy whom Jeff told me was a police officer shoving beads up his rectum.
The police officer was shoving beads up his rectum?
Yes.
Those of us that didn't like to be involved and didn't want to be involved were threatened.
And who would do these threatening remarks?
Larry King.
Do you think Larry King personally did?
I think he did. And when they threatened, that I can go find somebody that will kill you, and it will kill your family.
Drugs was a strong part of how they got control of some of the kids, because that's what some of the kids were there to get. They would do the sexual acts and then be provided with cocaine or whatever type of drug they wanted.
Heroin, I don't know, but that was my drug of choice. Till this day, I remain an addict.
Larry King was, I would say, the center of transporting the children around the country. The airplanes were usually in his name, at least in his name. They were paid for by Larry King.
4 years on, Boys Town remains unwilling to discuss its involvement with Larry King. We asked for an interview with Chief Executive Father 𝗣𝗨𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗡𝗏, but Boys Town's Public Affairs Officer refused.
I would have to give you a flat no. I'm just going to tell you at this point that we will not participate with you. We have no interest in talking to you folks. It's something that we don't even care to delve into.
Hi.
Hi, is Father 𝗣𝗨𝗡𝗧𝗘 available, please?
You can check in his office. It's the first one on the...
Thank you very much. We're here because we have to give Father 𝗣𝗨𝗡𝗧 and Boys Town every opportunity to talk to us about the very serious allegations.
Turn your recorder off. Please step outside.
Why is it that Boys Town is unwilling to discuss your relationship with Larry King?
We don't have a relationship with Larry King.
I'm afraid papers that we possess show that Boys Town had a relationship with Larry King.
I just suggest you be very careful about what you report. Excuse me? Unless you...
I've heard that people said that 𝗘𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗏𝗧 coached me and that he told me what to say, but the fact was I didn't meet 𝗘𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗏𝗧 until way after I'd already talked to the Omaha police about the abuse and had named all the same people. And they didn't ask me very much about Larry King or even Alan Bear at all. They treated the allegations that I made about the people who abused me almost like a joke.
The FBI's attitude was, just no, that these kind of things don't happen. From the first interview when I went, and realized they don't believe a thing I'm saying, they were just appalled. But I realized what that look in their eye was back then. It was fear. It was fear of I had witnessed, firsthand things that would, destroy this city. People, a position, what I mean? It's not going to be believed, they said. It will not be believed. You will be found guilty of perjury. And they weren't telling me maybe. They were saying, there's no way. You go on with this story, you're going to jail. That was said to me direct.
You literally have to have bricks for brains to take on the FBI in this country. And that's exactly what you'd have to do this properly. They now, in my opinion, in my investigation, are the architects of the cover-up.
We asked the FBI for an interview about its investigation of the Franklin scandal.
Larry Holmquist with the FBI here. We feel it would be inappropriate for us to comment. We work this with the Omaha Police Department. We just don't feel it would be appropriate for us to make comments.
Gary was threatened several times. His vehicles were tampered with. I would think whoever tampered with them, it was a scare tactic because it was so obvious that they were being tampered with.
Gary was one piece of evidence I know he got. He even said he got one step ahead of him this time. He told us about this book. It was like addresses, telephone numbers, names. He said if they knew he had it, they'd kill him.
On July the 11th, 1990, Gary Caradori and his 8-year-old son AJ were flying home from Chicago. They had watched the All-Stars baseball game, and Caradori had been pursuing new leads.
Investigators from the National Transportation Safety Board are in Harold Cameron's cornfield trying to determine what caused this private plane to crash, killing its 2 occupants.
The bodies of Gary Caradori and 8-year-old AJ were found in the wreckage.
National Transportation Safety Board investigators say wreckage from the crash is apparently strewn over a 3/4 to 1 mile long stretch in this field.
The federal investigation was never able to discover what tore the plane apart.
There are things missing from the plane. His briefcase is missing.
Within 24 hours of the tragedy, FBI agents impounded all records of the investigation.
Let alone my husband. But I think if you'd ever talk to any parent, be it mother or father, who's ever lost a child, I mean, the worst thing that you can think of is that somebody would want to murder a child.
I really feel that somebody killed my brother. Inside me, I know that somebody killed my brother. If somebody could help us out somewhere, somebody knows something.
Troy Bonner was to be the star witness against Elisha Owen, but he grew uneasy about maintaining what he claims were the lies fed to him by the FBI. But when his brother Sean died in an inexplicable gun accident, Troy and his family were convinced they'd been sent a warning message.
You know, and they killed him just flat out, right? Somehow, professionally, made something happen, you know, to shut me up.
The purpose of Sean's death? To instill fear. And it worked.
Do I feel guilty about my brother? Yes, I do. That's where all this is coming from. This is where the energy, that's where the energy is coming from, that I'm getting to do this. Is for him, because, I mean, it should have been me there instead of him. Really. I mean, I'm not trying to make anybody feel bad, but I mean, he was brilliant and you know, innocent. You know, it should have been me. I mean, he had so much to give. I've taken so much. You know, it should have been the other way around.
I can explain to you what it feels like to lose a child. But when you see the pain your kids have because of that, it's much worse. I can't do anything for him. I can't take that pain away for him.
It has shaken my faith in the institutions of government. I used to be a firm believer that the system would work, and that people who did things wrong would be punished. And we discovered victims who claimed to have been abused and who the grand jury acknowledged had been abused. But they did not try to find out who had abused those individuals. Instead, they convicted Elisha Owen of perjury. Indefensible from my point of view.
In July 1991, Elisha Owen was convicted of perjury. Her sentence was between 9 and 25 years.
I can't find a case in the history of this country where some kid got sentenced to 25 or 30 years in prison for something like this. If you were going to pick a what I call a tell sign, something that says something fishy about the whole thing, it was in the sentencing itself. For some reason, they had to send a signal to every kid who was a potential witness. My opinion again. A signal so loud and clear, if you dare to come forward, if you dare to talk, watch what happens.
3 months later, Larry King was jailed for the $40 million fraud. He was given a 15-year sentence, 10 years less than Elisha Owen. John DeCamp is now the only man fighting to help Larry King's victims. He's become the lawyer for Paul Bonacci and Elisha Owen.
I live in Nebraska. Hell, I was born here, raised here. I have 4 kids growing up here. Like it or not, it's my heritage, you know. Well, if it's a dirty cesspool that I got to live in or look back on that I left, that ain't good. The real cost, if I were going to say to my family, has been the fear and intimidation that's putting some of the kids. A couple of the kids are really frightened, and really had some sleeping problems over it, here, this or that. So that's been the real concern I've had.
In the face of mysterious threats, John has turned for advice to his friend and one-time boss, former head of the CIA, Bill Colby.
Old Bill Colby told me better than anything. The one thing that the bad people can't afford is publicity, and knocking you off right now or doing something obvious to one of your kids would bring them more trouble than it's worth.
I said, you have to consider the possibility of some danger to not only your reputation, but to your person. I mean, people do react rather violently to some kinds of charges, or particularly if they're true, there's more apt to be a negative reaction than if they're false. If they're false charges, then they can be reacted to in a normal way, by a libel suit or whatever. But if there's truth in it, there can be a danger in that situation. We've seen that happen in other cases.
Obviously, the FBI was protecting something a lot more significant than a bunch of old pedophiles having improper relations with little boys. They were protecting something a lot more significant than a bunch of drug peddlers. They were protecting, in my opinion, they were protecting some very prominent politicians, some very powerful and wealthy individuals associated with those politicians and the political system, up to and including the highest political people in this entire country.
In search of answers, John 𝗘𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗡𝗏 goes to Washington to investigate Larry King's powerful connections in the nation's capital. Paul Bonacci has come too. Larry King threw child sex parties at his $5,000 a month Washington house. Paul Bonacci was one of the victims.
Larry King's house down in Washington, D.C. was a nice house. It was on what I believe it was Embassy Row, because that's what they kept talking about. There were a lot of flags from different countries when you drove around in the area.
So tell me, Paul, how often did you come here?
I was about 14, about 1981, and at first it was about 3 or 4 times the first year. After that, it was about once a month after 81.
And who brought you here?
Larry King brought me here.
And this is the actual house where you...
Yes.
And what, you were used for sex there?
Yes. Some of the parties, when they started off, were straight political type parties with no sex. And then when some of the men had left, some of the politicians had left, the ones that had planned on engaging in some type of sexual activity, that would come after the party. Some of the kids would be held downstairs in some of the rooms, where if they acted up or if they started freaking out because of the drugs that they were on, they'd put them in a room that they couldn't get out of, and they'd lock them in.
Were there drugs at these parties?
Yes.
What kind of drugs?
Anything you wanted. Cocaine, heroin, speedballs.
You're telling me those things were at these parties where you had Larry King and prominent politicians?
Yes.
Were they readily available to anybody at the party?
At the after parties, they were readily available for anybody. Beforehand, they did it more upstairs than they did anywhere else, and it was kind of in the back rooms.
Were any attempts ever made that you know of to expose this situation?
As far as I know, nothing's ever been done, and most of the people that were in there had already been, I guess you say, compromised.
King's partner in sex crime was powerful Washington lobbyist Craig Spence. He took youngsters like Bonacci on midnight tours of the White House.
So you were in the White House then?
Yes.
And how did you gain access?
Well, I came down with Larry King, but Craig Spence was the one that arranged the trip for us. And it was kind of a gift for our services that we were doing.
How many times were you on this kind of a trip?
I came to it on 2 times.
2 times. And were you used for sex on those occasions?
Not until after we left.
After you left the White House?
Yes.
What time of night?
It was usually around midnight. For me, it was just kind of weird being in the White House at that time of the night, and getting to go into places that the guy was telling us that nobody gets to go to. I mean, I seen rooms in there that I'd never even heard about. And Craig Spence and Larry King had a couple of groups. One was called Bodies by God, and they had the Cowboys, and there was another group that was started by Larry King, which was called the Golden Boys, which was kids that were usually under the age of approximately 10.
On the trail of Craig Spence, DeCamp finds the investigative reporter who exposed Spence's callboy network, Paul Rodriguez of the Washington Times.
This was the thing that always bothered me. They claimed it was the largest male prostitution ring in the city that they've ever had uncovered. It was $1 million a year minimum.
Yeah.
And yet they only prosecuted the operator, Henry Vinson, and 3 of his lieutenants, as it were. They never went after any of the Johns or the clients. This operation, which was, again, quite large, claimed to have clients that ran from the White House to the Capitol Hill to the State House to the churches, within the media.
And that's precisely what Paul describes as the people he was with.
And a lot of the stuff led there, but we couldn't quite nail it at all cases because, again, to accuse someone of high stature, you've got to be very careful.
I understand.
We were able to do it through the mother lode provided us credit card receipts and canceled checks, and then lists of the clients. The prosecutors knew all this stuff. There was approximately 20,000 pieces of 20,000 documents that they had. They sealed the entire record when they found out I was accessing it. They required consent agreements from all the lawyers, all the clients, all the relatives of all the clients, all the hookers, including the clients.
If you can control about 3 or 4 key elements, you can totally own a state. You can make right wrong. You can make truth falsehood, falsehood truth. If you control the media, if you control the Justice Department, if you control the police, you own the system.
It's beyond belief that arguably the most powerful person in the world, the President of the United States, in the form of Richard Nixon, could not prevent the investigation of Watergate, or that President Reagan could not prevent the investigation of Iran-Contra, and yet somehow this group of unnamed, unknown, anonymous individuals in Omaha, Nebraska have such power they can control and protect all of these people from being investigated. Those allegations are ridiculous.
Well, first of all, Nixon did cover up Watergate, number 1. Bush did cover up Iran-Contra, at least officially. And Omaha has successfully covered up this situation. In each case, it was the press that exposed the problem. It wasn't institutions of government. They had been corrupted. They had been compromised. They were the ones doing the cover-up.
The perfect getaway for the world's rich and powerful. And in fact, every year, CEOs, media moguls, and high-level politicians flock here to the Bohemian Grove's secluded campout.
What you are about to watch is a clip of a woman speaking out in front of Bohemian Grove. She worked at the food court for several years before she spoke out about the things she had overheard and witnessed. In the video, she clearly seems uneasy expressing her concerns. Do you think she's lying? You be the judge.
I worked here for 11 years and educated myself.
What do they think of us?
Well,
expendable fodder units is what they're
the truth is, when you're quiet and you listen, you learn. And around these people, the quieter you are, the more you learn. And when you're a semi-intelligent person with integrity, you know when you're being taken, but you're quiet, you listen, you keep your enemies close.
That's right.
Man, I got to tell you, though, that the sheriff department's going to know me, okay? Okay, so I knew about the cloning of sheep before it happened, years. I knew about HIV and mosquitoes years before they knew about.
Why they tell
because the old men, they get freaked out and they have these big conferences with the head, health people of the world. I was friends with the paramedics. But I'm really happy this day has come. I've been wanting it for a really long time. I could tell you that they refer to everybody outside the club as little men. Every single man is a little man unless you're in this club. They are the brainstorm of everything that happens. They are the movers, the shakers.
In front of them.
They are...
They need to hear.
When you say it's not a conspiracy, it is. It's really creepy. This used to be considered the armpit of Sonoma County. This is where they kept all the drug addicts. And Starlit Hill is actually called Heroin Hill. Everyone was kept here. Look, I'll tell you this. The small town politics of Sonoma County are totally corrupted by the Bohemian Grove. And it's actually big. It's Napa County. I've met quite a few of these people. The prostitutes, who cares about that? That's sex. But I can tell you this, that every sheriff you see is bought out. They have no integrity. Doesn't matter if you know them on the street and they're nice and they smile at you. When it comes around Bohemian Club, everyone's bought out. These kids that are coming in with red shirts are Sonora, they're just little brats, snot-nosed brats. They're coming in because they think someday they're going to be big, and they're not. Well, we all are. There's no one free here. We're all slaves.
These kids, what are they doing there right now?
Well, I mean, I saw Nixon before he died. I've seen them all. They all have to come down to the food court. That's where women are allowed to serve. Except at Northwood, we're allowed to serve if you want, you know.
Women?
Yeah, yeah. Men too. There's men, you know, there's prostitutes here and there's boys, hot boys. But the main thing is, above all the sex and all that, it's the main objective of controlling the world. And it all happens here. And the police, oh God, someone know me.
You can do it. Waiting for this.
They all,
the world's watching.
They're all bought out and they have no integrity, and shame on them, but I understand they got kids too. We all do, you know? We all do. I do too. And I mean, my mom's house is to be torn down in January 1st. So I'm taking a huge risk here. It doesn't, that's not the point. There's underage prostitute. It's always been going on. That's not the point. The point is the big picture, and that's the big news. The banks that got built, everything's been decided here. So I'm really, really glad that people are taking action, and I hope people will reach out and kids will have some integrity and walk out. I didn't, but I learned. I learned a lot. And
you're here today.
I'm here today, and I'm passing it on, and sometimes silence is knowledge. And that's why I'm here right now.
And you're silent no more.
No, I'm not silent anymore. Thank you.
Thank you.
A common theme you will see between these people who have tried to bring about awareness of these issues is that the police are bought out, just like she says in this clip. Even when 𝗘𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗡𝗧 approached the police with his claims, they called him crazy and wouldn't even look into his case. In fact, a large group of police officers are Freemasons. They even have their own section called the Fraternal Order of Police, consisting of around 325,000 members. Now, let's get a better look at the Alex Jones documentary, where he snuck in back in the year 2000. As crazy as the media paints him out to be, he was definitely onto something with Bohemian Grove.
One of the Sonoma County Sheriff's deputies showed up and began asking us why we were filming. We calmly told him we were just sightseeing as members of the Bohemian Club. The point that has to be made here, though, is they do have hidden cameras. After escaping the Sheriff's Department, Mike and I traveled high into the hills to wait until dark and the beginning of the cremation of care ceremony. Before the cremation of care, all the Bohemian Club members begin a massive feast of revelry.
He's so pissed off at me.
After the feast, cult members travel from the main dining area under the trees out to the eastern side of the lake.
Be gone! Once more, he vanished the scene. Be gone, dull care! Fire shall have its will of thee. Be gone, dull care! And all the winds make merry with thy ducks. Hail, fellowship's eternal flame! Once again, midsummer sets us free!
There had to be, in my belief, an occultist, a deep occultist, who designed each of the elements of this ceremony. It wasn't just a bunch of guys sit together at a bar and said, hey, let's have a good time, the cremation of care, and why don't we do this or that. I believe it was purposely designed, each element in its turn, for what they did.
Now there you see the funeral pyre burning with the effigy of a human, or it could be real, ladies and gentlemen. There's been a lot of strange going-ons in that area of Northern California, but this is what the establishment is into right here in America, the cremation of care. And this was July 15th, 2000.
Bohemian Grove. I made it. I actually made it.
At the end of 2023, a YouTuber by the name of 𝗘𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗡𝗧 snuck into the grove, crossing the Russian River by a kayak. He used a frying pan as his oar. Somehow, he wasn't caught during his infiltration of the grove. Here, he gives us a better look at the owl statue and altar, which don't seem too well kept. I'm sure there were other sites in use at the time of this video that we are currently unaware of. Probably on a remote island or in the middle of the woods somewhere hidden away from civilization.
Yeah. This is the owl statue. What the? No way. This is f***ing cool. Oh, that's hollow. They need to fill this pond up. They do. Yeah, that's the owl. A bunch of ferns have grown on it. Well, this is what I wanted to see. Oh, no way. You can go like behind the owl. I got some outlets.
In this video, he walks into one of the cabins and sees a strange druidic statue in the corner. One of the posters resting on the side wall says, "Kidnapped." Not sure if that has any significance, but some people have come forward saying that children have been kidnapped and taken to the grove for human sacrifice rituals. After this video, 𝗘𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗡𝗧 snuck into the Bohemian Grove again at the beginning of 2024 in a Part 2 infiltration. He was able to search further on the private grounds. He found some other posters, one of which implies something much darker. Bohemian Christmas poster shows little children guarded by the owl, but what's most suspicious is the statement at the bottom which says, and I quote, "Come as children, little children," end quote. Could this imply to there being children at the Grove? Why would this be advertised at an all-men's encampment? However, this is probably referring to the origins of Bohemian Grove, as what is stated at the top in bold is the word Bohemia, referring to Christmas in the German region where the owl symbolism originated with the 𝗘𝗡𝗥𝗣𝗢𝗧𝗘𝗡𝗏 society. Further on in the video, he had to run to escape security, and making it out without facing security, Dancer released a video shortly after part 2 saying that he was being followed. It could be due to the fact that he infiltrated Bohemian Grove twice, or that he peed directly on the owl.
Recently it has come to my attention that I might be getting tracked or watched or both, and it's a bit concerning. So I think it's important for me to say this again, especially with all the news going on with the Boeing whistleblower who recently got taken care of, so to speak. I'm not suicidal, and I would never KMS. I think I move too frequently with too much distance that it would be hard for somebody to harm me, but not impossible. And I think I could be a threat to, you know, these higher-ups' agenda. So I think that they might want to have a word with me or try to take care of me. And I just wanted to put this out there before anything does happen, if it does.
What you are about to watch is a clip where ambushed journalists ask questions about Bohemian Grove to one of the attendees, former governor of New Mexico, Bill Richardson. As you watch, pay attention to the way he ignores the journalists and makes them seem like they are invisible. David Gergen, who was much more verbal toward Alex Jones, clearly didn't want to say anything. But Richardson straight up lies to the journalists and walks away. Of course, that shouldn't raise any questions, right?
Yes, sir. First question?
Yeah.
I'm sorry. You gave a keynote speech at the Bohemian Grove Club, sir. A club which openly has mock child sacrifices and satanic worship, sir. Can you answer my question, sir, please?
I was very pleased. I was very pleased with my performance in the debate. It was a good debate.
What about the Bohemian Grove Club, though, sir? That's very important. They do mock human sacrifices there, sir, and you reported being there.
I was very pleased with my performance in the debate.
Sir, why did you ignore my question, sir? Can we have open dialogue? If you want to be president, let's have an open dialogue about this. You just ignored me, sir. It's not nice. It's not.
It's running up a storm about that Bohemian Grove over there. Human sacrifices and male prostitutes shipped in there yearly. I sure like to know what goes on over there.
That's respectable stuff.
I know, isn't it? It's disgusting.
What you're doing is not respectable.
Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were talking about what the governor does over there yearly at Bohemian Grove.
This is about the debate. This is not an open news conference.
Right. Well, with the governor, there's never an open news conference. He talks about AIDS and health care and the same stuff over and over. Governor, Bohemian Grove, actually, you said before that did you or did you not attend Bohemian Grove in San Francisco?
Just one last question. Last time we talked, you were kind of like setting up a storm when I brought up the Bohemian Grove. Why is that?
The what?
The Bohemian Grove. Nothing?
Peter, you witnessed children being sacrificed at the Grove?
You know, I did. And I've made this very public. It's revolving around the case, the missing child case of 𝗘𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗡𝗏. And if anybody looks it up on the internet, they still say that it's an unsolved case. I've been to law enforcement in San Francisco. I made a mention of this for the first time back in 2003 while I was still in jail for another issue, and I thought I would be on death row. I, myself, Peter Alexander Cherneff, am one of 3 people that have witnessed ritualistic murders of children during the 80s up here. The other one is David Scherger, and the third person is Paul Bonacci, who was made well known in the book by Senator John DeCamp, The Franklin Cover-Up. I can tell you from past experience and what I know from other sources, also firsthand, is they go way out of their way to dispose of bodies. Well, the cremation of care, what it is, really, it's a discussion regarding population control. They're making decisions as to what group of millions of people they're going to genocide next. And we all have seen the genocides over the last 10, 15 years for anybody that's paying even a modicum of attention. At the Bohemian Grove, I was involved in a rather private ritual, Catholic, Nazi, satanic in nature, a service, a working, if you will, with 9 relative unknowns at the time, so to speak. A most unique killing ritual table with 9 retractable, long, thin, sharp knives, blades.
Midsummer sets us free. You burned me once again.
Young Catholic Kevin Collins, snatched off the streets of San Francisco, was sacrificed. As he lay on the table, the knives were brought up through him. And after this, each participant, buoyed by the others, rose to prominence. Leaders of the minions, princes unto mammon. I called it 9 knights, 9 arms, 9 blades. The participants, except for 1 or 2 I didn't mention, are Willie Brown, Arlen Specter, Barney Frank, Roger Mahoney, the L.A. Cardinal, Ratzinger, who's now the Pope, Robert Byrd, George Bush Sr., otherwise known as George Scherff, S-C-H-E-R-F-F.
You mean Magog? That's what they call him, the man who wages war against God in the final days of earth.
Yes, and Warren Buffett, and the Master of Ceremonies was Dr. Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino.
So they are involved in ritual murders, satanic Luciferian.
They definitely have these during the 80s. I can't attest to what's going on there now. I believe that most of their work was, in certain arenas, was done at that time and prior.
Something interesting to note about Michael Aquino is that he was the founder of the Temple of Set, an overtly satanic organization. He has professed himself as a Satanist and was the Lieutenant Colonel of Psychological Operations in the U.S. Army. He retired back in 1994. In 1988, American journalist and attorney Geraldo Rivera brought Aquino as well as the LaVeys onto his show, Exposing Satan's Underground. Here's what he brought up about Michael Aquino.
Once again, a warning about some tough language and descriptions in a report that we'll have for you in just a moment. Dr. Aquino, the high priest of the Church of Set.
Temple of Set.
Temple of Set, also a colonel, interestingly enough, in the United States Army. What is it, this Satanism?
I think that there is some confusion tonight because this same term means something different to Satanists than it does to Christians in the United States. By our own standards, the people who you've shown in these film clips would not be Satanists, either present or in the past. Rather, they would be the failures of a conventional religion.
I appreciate your opinion. What is it, sir, then? What is Satanism?
Well, originally the Church of Satan, when it was founded, was composed not of people with a hatred for Christianity, but of people who, by and large, were agnostics and atheists, because they felt that the institutions which had arisen around Christianity had failed in their moral commitment. So Satanism itself became an emphasis on rational self-interest and on taking responsibility for your own intellectual and ethical decisions.
Rational self-interest, you call it?
Yes.
Is it not a fact that a 3.5-year-old girl identified you as the alleged perpetrator of molestation?
No, as a matter of fact, it is not the case. An accusation was made by her stepfather, who was an Army chaplain, speaking on behalf of this child. In her original interview with the FBI, she denied ever being molested.
Well, I've seen you are innocent until proven guilty. You were never charged in this case. I don't want to belabor the point. I have seen, however, the affidavits for the search warrant of your home, and they indicate the child is speaking to the authorities, not her father.
This was after she had been subjected to therapy.
Let's say you are innocent of that. You are no longer at the Presidio, you are now in St. Louis, but you are still a serving officer or colonel in the United States Army. Do you feel it is inconsistent with a high-ranking officer pledged, sworn, to uphold the Constitution of the United States that you are also a practicing Satanist?
Not in the least. The Army has known of my religion for the last 20 years. There has never been a problem with it, any more than there is a problem with other members of minority religions.
But let me read from the Satanic Bible. Quote, this is the number one, commandment. Death to the weakling, wealth to the strong. How can you believe this and still uphold the Constitution of the United States? Death to the weakling?
Well, for one thing, what you're looking at there is a highly polemical book that was never meant to be taken literally in all of its commandments.
Father.
Yes, and I'm aware of that, and I'm also saying that members of the Church of Satan understood that much of this book was in the form of a polemic. It was a statement that was dramatically made, but was not intended to be taken literally in all its respects.
So we should not take this book literally?
Correct.
This is Dr. Walter Grote, would you stand, sir? Whose daughter was allegedly abused at West Point, the United States Military Academy. You were a captain in the United States Army. Aside from what allegedly happened to your daughter, which I know you allege was part of a satanic cult, and having nothing to do with this man, I state again for the record, what is your feeling, sir, on the fact that a serving officer in the United States Army is also a professed Satanist, a high-ranking person?
Well, I think in this election year, we've heard a lot about values, Geraldo. We've heard a lot that our little children should be saying the Pledge of Allegiance to the flag. Mr. Aquino has identified himself as an antichrist. He preaches that as the leader of the Temple Set. I don't think I'm misquoting him. I find it inconceivable that we can have candidates talking about one nation under God and having our children say that, yet by the same token, we can have somebody in our army as a colonel leading our troops in battle who are opposed to the very concept of God and whose whole purpose it is to fight against God.
Now, Dr. Walter Grote was true in what he said, that people like Aquino aim to make war against God. Interesting how an army chaplain would make an accusation toward Aquino for child molestation with his 3.5-year-old stepdaughter. Even more interesting is that Aquino lived in the San Francisco area on the Presidio of San Francisco Army Post, not too far from Bohemian Grove. I wonder what the Temple of Set was doing in the San Francisco area, what kind of sacrificial offerings they're partaking in to their god, Satan.
Satan soldiers are also high-ranking officers in the United States military. Here at San Francisco's Presidio Army Base, for example, Lieutenant Colonel Michael Aquino led a double life as a satanic high priest. The colonel's cult is listed in the San Francisco telephone book, and his phone answering machine boasts of his affiliation.
This is the Temple of Set. The temple is the only international satanic religious institution fully recognized by the United States government.
Indeed, the Army does officially recognize Satanism as a legitimate religion and supplies chaplains with this guide for ministering to the satanic soldier. Yet unofficially, some charge that Army bases have become sanctuaries for devil worshippers. Just last month, under a full moon, I took a midnight tour of the Presidio grounds with police investigator Ed Abanofsky. Are you saying that there was a satanic cult active right here on the Army base?
Yes, we believe so. There's evidence to substantiate that. They had satanic rituals going on. There's an altar in there, and all of the graffiti on the wall would indicate that.
Let's see what I can see. How'd you find this place?
This is a fortification during World War II. During World War II, where they had gun batteries.
I can see a pentagram painted on the wall. I can see the words Prince of Darkness. On this wall, I see several inverted crosses and other obvious satanic ritualistic paintings or symbols. Joseph, we've agreed to conceal your identity, but you are an officer in the United States Army.
That's correct.
And you were an officer in the United States Army during the time you were a member of this satanic organization.
Yes.
Did the authorities at the Presidio know that a satanic organization was active on their base during the time that you were a member?
They were very much aware of it, yes.
Satanism may be a constitutionally protected religion, but similar to another recent case at the United States Military Academy at West Point. Here, charges surface connecting ritual child abuse at the Presidio Daycare Center to the devil cult. It was here parents and others allege that as many as 60 young children were ritualistically abused by soldiers of Satan.
What actually was done to the kids?
Oral copulation, sodomy, defecation. They were urinated on.
The former chief juvenile investigator at the Presidio, Ed Abanofsky, is here. He's now a deputy sheriff in Santa Clara County.
Yes, Geraldo stated that as many as 60 kids at the daycare center on base were SRA victims. If Aquino and other members were partaking in these terrible acts with children, clearly Peter Alexander Chernoff's claims about Kevin Collins seem more compelling, especially since he says that Michael Aquino was the master of ceremonies. But in this next clip, things take an unexpected turn.
You witnessed the sacrifice of an individual in a satanic ritual at the Bohemian Grove. Is that correct?
Yes, it was Kevin Collins. And I've also made this very public that I was one of 3 or 4 people that kidnapped him off the streets of San Francisco. And so Kevin Collins was chosen by Michael Aquino, and because he was a Catholic young virgin boy. And he was, I named you the names of who was all involved. These were all people that were somewhat unknown, at least in the major public at that time.
So they are guilty as hell. Is that correct?
They are as guilty as most people in the world are of murder. And they definitely were involved in the murder of this.
You heard that right. Chernoff claims to have been one of the kidnappers of Kevin Collins. Now it makes more sense why he was involved in the private ritual killing with his 9 relative unknowns. Another interesting case comes from someone who claims that she was sold into the MK industry, Kathy O'Brien. If you don't already know, MK was declassified by the CIA, which entailed mind control experiments that were being tested on US citizens beginning in 1953. More details to come in the next phase. Mark Phillips worked for the intelligence community in the 60s and 70s and saw firsthand what kind of corruption was taking place at the highest levels of government. He was a strong advocate on the idea of valuing true freedom of thought, once realizing that the majority of citizens were subject to soft mind control through the media and education systems. In a recent documentary, Kathy talks about her experience with Bohemian Grove.
I thought the whole world was saturated with this kind of criminal activity. Everything around me was involved in it. The handlers and the owners of the mind control slaves, there were so many of them that they actually had a charm school that trained the girls or guys for various sexual perversions and fulfilling them on high levels of government. We were also used for blackmailing purposes with these kind of extreme perversions. They were like strategically hidden cameras in the ceilings and in the walls that would film the perverse acts, and then the politicians or whomever, the various world leaders, were then blackmailed into compliance with the New World Order through all these videotapes. One place where they had a lot of cameras and perversions set up just specifically for this was Bohemian Grove. At Bohemian Grove, the politicians would sit around and talk about the different ways that they were going to be implementing the New World Order, different traumas that were going to be unleashed on society. One discussion that was just really horrific was using AIDS as a means of population control and introducing that in. At the Grove, when girls reached age 30, they were murdered or they were sacrificed, because at age 30, there's electrochemical changes that happen in the brain where people, sometimes those neuron pathways start changing a little bit and memory starts leaking out. We'll see where people who have been programmed specifically that are high profile, like maybe in the entertainment industries, They will start breaking up around age 30. We'll see things like Britney Spears shaving their head. It's just part of what happens around that age.
One wig for hair super short in the mugshot.
So many government secrets and personal reputations were staked on the belief that I could never think to bring to mind, to tell their secrets, that I would never be deprogrammed to remember the things I've been programmed to forget. It was horrific knowing that so many lives were lost, so many girls when they reached age 30. And of course, so often for the perversion purposes, they were saying that the girls were too old to be used anymore for perversion anyway. So, you know, they were useless, just get rid of them. And I was definitely going to be killed there as well. I was to go out in a blaze of glory and be burned alive. I'm so fortunate that an intelligence insider who saw the kind of corruption that was going on in the highest levels of government saved my life so that we could begin to expose what was being done. Mark Phillips was so outraged by what he saw, he decided to take action. When he rescued me out of that situation, I had no memory whatsoever. I had no conscious thought of my own. I only knew to do exactly what I'd been programmed to do.
Kathy went through a lot, making several claims in her book that seem far too unimaginable for us to even conceptualize a human being partaking in, especially world leaders. She underwent programming from ventriloquist Alex Houston, who was able to control her against her own will to perform sex acts with him. An interview in 2000 details more about Mark Phillips' experience with Alex Houston, as well as a more detailed depiction of Phillips' personal testimony of what he went through with Kathy O'Brien.
I came to meet Alex Houston in the mid-'80s when he was introduced to me because he had an idea to put a company together with the People's Republic of China, a joint venture company. And he knew I had State Department connections, and he knew that I had business background, very successful, so he elected to make me the president of the company, and we put this business together, a legitimate business manufacturing capacitor banks for the mining industry. Well, it was the Chinese that told me that Alex Houston was involved in all these nefarious acts, and they did show me hard proof. Chinese intelligence officer told me that Alex Houston was involved in child and adult pornography. He was involved in drug running, and he was involved in money laundering for the Central Intelligence Agency, and it went all the way to the White House. Now, he alluded to that woman and her child that were in Mr. Houston's charge, I think his exact words were. He didn't say they were married. He didn't say that they were related or even anything else. He said that they were Alex Houston's charges. I believe were the exact words. After about a week, I think, of thinking about it, I went ahead and began to reconnect with some people who were still active within military intelligence. Two people I met in a restaurant in Clarksville, Tennessee, that were attached to Fort Campbell, Kentucky. They were CIA. I met with them. And these men told me, basically, that what I had heard in China was most likely true, and that they didn't personally know Alex Houston, but they knew exactly what I was talking about, and that I had in fact bumped into something that I couldn't do anything about. I asked them if they could please steer me in the direction of someone who could help Kathy and her daughter break free mentally of their CIA mind control existence. They told me that they would look into it, but it was too risky, in essence, that I need to look somewhere else. Why didn't I contact one of my other friends? And they had told me all they could tell me. It was at that point that I began to believe that there were plenty of good psychiatrists and psychologists, particularly the ones that have engaged in research and mind control that I knew of, like UCLA's Jolene West and others that I thought could be a possible help in helping me get Kathy and her daughter into therapy, because my intentions were to go back to China. I had no intentions of staying in the United States. During this week period of time, I discovered that my bank accounts had been pilfered. At the time that my bank accounts were just suddenly disappearing, I really, the only way I could do anything was to surmise that Kathy O'Brien might be the reason that my accounts disappeared, because I knew about her. And I had inquired as to the validity of the charges that the Chinese had given me about Alex Houston and what he was doing. There was no question. There was no question as to Kathy's mental condition at that time, because that was the first time that I'd had the opportunity to sit down with her one-on-one without anybody else being around and literally ask her some questions in a literal mode and test her level of suggestibility and determine that she was indeed under someone else's mind-controlled influence. Now, who that person was, at that point in time, I did not know, other than Alex Houston. Alex Houston called me and said, have you talked to Kathy? I said, no. I said, I really don't talk with Kathy. He said, well, she's gone. I said, well, I wouldn't have any way of knowing. And he said, well, I can't understand it. I mean, she's gone. She's taken my VCR. And at that point in time, I was just about to fall on the floor because I just lost $2 million, and he's complaining about a VCR. And I don't know why. It's still funny to this day. He was complaining about all these little things that she took out of the house, which absolutely was nothing. She took nothing, amounted to anything, except some medical equipment for her daughter and his VCR. After 2 or 3 months of taking care of my business and trying to get my money back and et cetera, I ran into another problem. This same deputy called me up and told me the sheriff of my county wanted to see me. I went to see the sheriff, and the sheriff told me, he said, Mark, I don't know what you're into. It has something to do with that woman that's in your house. I said, well, what are you talking about? He said, you know that we work very closely with the FBI, the Federal Bureau of Investigation. He said, someone from the FBI in the Nashville, Tennessee office came into this office and told me that you were scheduled for a hit by the CIA. I said, well, now that's their job to stop this. I said, CIA's not supposed to be operating on domestic soil, according to the Constitution. He said, Mark, I don't want to hear any of this. I want you to get out of my county. I want you to leave now. I don't care where you go. Just get out of my county. I said, well, I have a house here. I have property here. He said, sell it and leave. Give it away. Just leave it. Abandon it. Do whatever you need to do. But you're going to leave. I said, what are you threatening me? He said, no, I'm begging you. Please leave. I was absolutely convinced that my chances of survival were 1 in a million at that point. I had nothing to lose. Everything in my life had been destroyed, it seemed like overnight, even though it took months. The process of deprogramming is really the person, you don't deprogram anybody, the person deprograms himself. You establish that they're safe, not only in reality but in their mind. You establish a trust bond between the two of you. In this case, it was absolute trust, because she was seeing that I had lost everything, that I had been a very successful businessman before, and all of a sudden nothing. I'm driving around in a Pacer. There's any number of things that were, obvious to even somebody in her condition. So it took about 9 months of her writing out her memories, and then me taking those memories, holding them 3 weeks, letting her look at them, and if she remembered them, fine. If she didn't remember them, actually I tossed them in the trash, because in retrospect I did the right thing. Everything on this planet vibrates at a different rate. Absolutely everything, even on a cellular level. What we're looking at here is the effect of changing that vibration at the brainstem. And once that's done, once that's understood, which is clearly understood now, we can begin to understand how to control the mind of an individual externally by simply changing the vibration at the brainstem. Unfortunately, this is a very dangerous science because the brainstem can be damaged by combinations of harmonics. Kathy related to it as harmonic hell, and it was the sound, she claimed, of two rusty ships rubbing and scrubbing in the night. Well, I know this is when she described it, it was one of those things she could not possibly have known, because I was sworn to secrecy not to ever divulge that information, even though it was just describing a tone. Well, every word that you and I are saying is a combination of tones. And if we learn how to control the modulation of those tones, we can actually affect someone's subconscious. And this has been known since the 40s, quite easily, because you must remember that someone like Kathy O'Brien, or anyone who's exposed to repetitious trauma prior to age 5, has an extraordinary high suggestibility level. They're very literal. Like she was telling me that she went into a place in the back of the White House that it said, "Serve us entranced." And I'm going, that's absurd in my own mind, but I'm not saying anything to her. And then all of a sudden, while sitting and going over my notes far away from her, I write it out and it says service entrance. That is the literal mind. She was told this is serve us entranced. So the next step, of course, was to see if she could remember or write out the name or person or persons who were responsible for delivering that message. Because what they actually did act as a trigger. Because she had been pre-programmed with the word entranced and serve us. Okay? In serve us of her country is the way she was taught. Well, my reaction to Kathy's first information was, in spite of all that had happened, was disbelief. First of all, I had never been exposed to the phenomena of pedophilia or adults having sex with children. It didn't equate in my mind. I knew that it was obvious, and I had studied all the Himmer stuff, and I knew that it existed, but I didn't relate to it. And to be naming top people in Washington all the way to the presidency, including George Bush, I had a great deal of difficulty because I met George Bush, and I knew a lot of these people. I thank God didn't know Byrd. However, I did know a lot of the people she was mentioning, not personally, but I had met them at parties or had been inaugurations or whatever. And more or less in my mind, I had an acquaintance with them. I was shocked. I was in a state of shock that I could not relate to what she was saying, nor could I believe that it was all true. I thought it might be some screen memory or something that was planted memory to destroy her credibility. And at that point in time, the only proofs that I had was on Alex Houston and some operations with NASA and some events that were very specific to her victimization that occurred in the state of Alabama and Tennessee and in Michigan.
Thankfully, Mark and Kathy lived on, and he was able to deprogram her so that she could experience a much simpler and peaceful life in Alaska. Both of their lives have been ruined for speaking out about these things, which, if you think about it, seems to provide even more credibility. Why would two people spend the whole rest of their lives talking so passionately about things which immediately get detained from the public? Why would Kathy make up things that we could only correlate with a fictional story and believe it so wholeheartedly? From her traumatic experiences in MKUltra and satanic rituals, she developed a dissociative personality disorder, just like Benassi. Here is a warning for the following statements she wrote in her book, Transformation of America. On page 170, O'Brien describes how hidden cameras at the Grove were used for blackmail purposes for victims of the elite. And I quote, "Among these internationally scandalous tapes are numerous videos covertly produced at the supposedly secure political sex playground in Northern California, Bohemian Grove. According to Houston, Dante's high-tech, undetectable cameras use fiber optics, and fisheye lenses were in each of the elite club's numerous sexual perversion theme rooms. My knowledge of these cameras was due to the strategically compromising positions of the political perpetrators I was prostituted to in the various kinky theme rooms. I was programmed and equipped to function in all rooms of Bohemian Grove in order to compromise specific government targets according to the personal perversions. Anything, anytime, anywhere, with anyone was my mode of operation at the Grove. Another woman who had her life ruined for speaking out against the elites was Fiona Barnett. She, like Kathy, was sold into the MK Ultra industry of Australia as a child. She was unwillingly part of a coven which was part of a greater crime syndicate involving several VIPs, and her grandparents signed her up for it before her birth. Like Paul and Kathy, Fiona claims to have had experiences at Bohemian Grove that are straight out of a horror movie.
Now I'd like to introduce to you Fiona Barnett, that's B-A-R-N-E-T-T, who is one of the bravest people you will ever have the privilege to meet.
Throughout my childhood, I was a victim of Australia's VIP child sex trafficking ring. For example, I was prostituted to pedophile parties at Parliament House, Canberra, and to an international leader at Fairbairn Military Airport. The people involved in this elite pedophile ring included high-ranking politicians, police and judiciary. From the late 1980s, I reported my abuse experiences to multiple healthcare professionals, not one of whom adhered to mandatory reporting requirements. I reported to New South Wales Police in 2008. I reported to the Royal Commission in 2012. I reported to Operation Attest in Canberra. I made formal witness statements to New South Wales Police and have agreed to do more. I've reported directly to the New South Wales and Federal Police Commissioners and to the New South Wales Coroner. I have provided sufficient names, times, dates and places for authorities to investigate. My experiences were horrific beyond words. I witnessed child abduction, torture, rape, murder. But the way I've been treated for reporting the crimes I witnessed and experienced has been far worse than my original abuse experiences. Victims endure the most miserable childhoods. We then spend the rest of our lives paying for the crimes committed against us. Victims are constantly placed under excessive scrutiny. If we can't provide a precise time and date for something that happened 40 years ago, we're called liars. If we get emotional, we're labelled crazy. If we are vocal, we're just attention seekers. It's time to focus our attention away from victims and onto those responsible for the crimes against children. In the 2006 census, Australians identified child protection as their #1 concern. Why then does our government continue to ignore the public's concern for children? Australia is a pedophile haven. Our laws are written, interpreted and administered in a way that benefits pedophiles and silences victims of crime. Our university lecturers teach pro-pedophilia material. Our health boards continue to allow offending doctors and psychologists to practice. We are up to our second Royal Commission into child abuse in 20 years. The Wood Royal Commission was indeed a failure. If it was successful, I wouldn't be standing here right now. The Wood Royal Commission was established in response to complaints about the VIP pedophile ring that abused me. This is the exact same elite pedophile ring that I reported to the current Royal Commission. In 2013, I asked the Royal Commission, what are you going to do differently to the failed Wood Royal Commission? They had no answer for me. If the Royal Commission does not result in the investigation and prosecution of the VIP pedophiles that victims like me have named, then they are just information gathering. I know you want me to stand here and name names. Yet to concentrate on the names serves to shift the focus from the entire reason I'm standing here. I have provided the names to the authorities. It is their responsibility to combine my information with what other victims have presented and properly investigate. And now I will give you some VIP names. Michelle. Michelle was a friendly 12-year-old with long dark hair. I witnessed her abduction, rape and murder when I was 6 years old. Samantha. Samantha was 9 years old with wavy long brown hair and a warm smile. She had Down syndrome. Samantha was murdered when I was 12 years old. Chloe. Chloe was an attractive 4-year-old with brown straight cut hair into a bulb and sea green eyes. Chloe was murdered when I was 14 years old. Don't make this about me. Focus on those victims who couldn't be here today to personally share what happened to them at the hands of the VIP pedophiles who have infiltrated Australia's supreme institutions.
I'd been to America before a few times. So one time was a main time that stands out was when I was 6, and I was trafficked to Bohemian Grove to Richard Nixon's very close Watergate buddy, Billy Graham, the Reverend Billy Graham. Nixon assaulted me in Australia when he was over there after the Watergate thing, and then he recommended me to Billy Graham, and as a victim that would be suitable for a Bohemian Grove. Their pedophile Luciferian get together every July, their summer camp. That is nothing but a Luciferian pedophile organisation. They really do murder people there. I saw one adult murder, and and they dressed me up as a teddy bear and sent me on a hunt. The favourite thing pedophiles like to do is hunting children. Bohemian Grove is originally a hunting organisation. They love to hunt kids. That's what they love to do, and that's what the royals like to do over in Europe. You've heard other testimonies from people. And my 6th birthday was, I attended a big hunt where they actually shot children for sport. They said, you're responsible for these kids. If you don't get them over those hills into safety, we're shooting them. And so that's, that was part of training. Former President Richard Nixon raped me in the back of a USA CIA military plane at Australia's main military airport, the one where Air Force One lands if it visits Australia. After this, I was child sex trafficked from Sydney Airport to California, USA, in a cargo plane. I was gassed and stuffed in a wooden crate like an animal. During this trip, I was raped by media founder Ted Turner at a pedophile party held at Disneyland, and I was trafficked to the annual summer camp at Bohemian Grove, attended by notable politicians, businessmen and other VIPs. I was raped by Reverend Billy Graham in a pink bubble-themed cabin at Bohemian Grove. Billy Graham told me that his good buddy Richard Nixon had recommended me to him. At Bohemian Grove, I was one of a group of children dressed as teddy bears and hunted for sport by men in the forest to the theme song Teddy Bear's Picnic. I also witnessed the ritual murder of a woman by male guests dressed in black Luciferian robes.
Strange that Fiona brings up the fact that she and other children were being hunted to the theme song Teddy Bear's Picnic, as famous voice actor from The Simpsons, Harry Shearer, was the director of a film called Teddy Bear's Picnic in 2002. Keep in mind this is roughly 2 years after the Bohemian Grove incident with Alex Jones. Let's take a look at some parts of the trailer which seem to point back directly to Bohemian Grove.
And the Redwood country is bracing for yet another invasion of the Zambesians. So no, that's not a new kind of killer bee. It's the members of California's and maybe the country's most exclusive men's club.
Well, I take it we were all good boys last night?
He's like a howitzer.
Looks like good makeup. You know, these days you never know when you're going to be on the news, so you wear it every day just as a precaution.
Have you ever used a video camera before?
Yeah.
Hey, you little prick! Give me that camera! Stop! You know who I am!
And that is all that you need to know right now.
It is evident from the trailer that the movie pokes fun at Alex Jones and even humorizes the all too real aspects of Bohemian Grove. It should come as no surprise that drag queens have appeared at the Grove and men have cross-dressed in their hijinks and low-jinks performances since the mid-1900s. If we think back to the Teddy Bear's Picnic movie and even the House of Cards episode about Elysian Fields, we will begin to realize how the media purposely embeds ideas about Bohemian Grove into their films, which only few would recognize who are in the know. The media will entertain these events or ideas to exercise their authority, showing their cards subliminally, a subtle trick used to condition many moviegoers who wish to escape reality. However, what is actually real and transpires in our world trumps the fictional one once you realize that many of these stories are pulled from real-life events they don't want us to know anything about. They shove their power in our faces to show who really controls the media, and they use predictive programming to openly explain pieces of their plan before they unveil it to the public. This prepares the population to be preconditioned for it when it takes place. They hide their plans in plain sight as part of the ritual, and over the course of these videos you will begin to understand as to why.
Who's ready to Bohemian Grove? The annual power struggle will begin shortly. And now, please welcome the Sixth Society. They're a little wet, they're a little wild. It's the Atlanteans. They wear sandals and create scandals. It's the Catholic Church.
Mamma mia, bucca de petto!
Roger Mahoney, the LA Cardinal. Ratzinger, who's now the Pope.
Here comes the toast of the undercrust. It's the Reptoids, honey. And these jokers are wild. It's the Juggalos.
That's right. If magic is all we've ever known.
What? You down to clown? We secretly control global finance. And finally, we saved the best for last. The all-seeing, all-knowing, all-partying Illuminati! I love you, Jay-Z.
Queen Bee! Lin-Manuel!
Illuminati confirmed.
There are many more instances in movies and shows where Bohemian Grove is directly entwined. Let's take a journey through a few of these connections. The first of these is an Adult Swim TV show from 2005 called Lucy, the Daughter of the Devil. Director of the show, Lauren Bouchard, eventually went on to create the famous American sitcom Bob's Burgers. This show boasts of its surreal satire and humorizes ideas about Satan and his involvement with the elite. As you will see shortly, this show openly mocks Christianity and uses symbolism as a means of worship to their religious affiliations. In episode 6, titled Human Sacrifice, a senator by the name of Whitehead decides to run for president for the United States, and he wants to celebrate his candidacy by performing a ritual human sacrifice at Bohemian Grove. Yes, actually sacrificing a human, not just an effigy. In the episode, Satan suggests DJ Jesus for the sacrifice.
Just want to let you know that we're on schedule to announce my candidacy for president Friday night. The big sacrifice at Bohemian Grove.
Oh, 2 sacrifices in 1 week?
Master, you have to come. I mean, this one is just like friends and family, but Friday's the real one.
Yeah, fine, I'll come.
Half of Washington is flying in.
Hey, I said I'll come.
Great. Oh, hey, any requests for who we should sacrifice?
I don't know. Don't you usually do that? I just show up.
Yeah, I'm just asking in case you had someone special in mind, but I'll take care of it.
Hey, can I get your boyfriend's phone number?
Why?
I want to invite him somewhere.
Why do you want to invite my boyfriend somewhere?
I want to invite him to, like, the guys-only barbecue. I want to get to know him.
Like a bonding kind of thing?
Yes, exactly.
Okay.
Build a fire in the woods, get all undressed, yell at the sky.
DJ Jesus? It's Jesus. Oh, this is Bob Whitehead from the United States Senate. Yeah, I don't give money over the phone. Please remove me from your list. Oh, no. I don't want your money. I want to hire you to DJ this Friday.
Yeah, I'll have to check my schedule. I don't think I'll have time.
I gotta tell you, this is not just any event. Imagine the most amazing dance party / orgy / political summit on the planet. Okay, I'm imagining that. Did you see Eyes Wide Shut? Yes, I did see that.
Now, get undressed.
Get undressed?
Remove your clothes.
This senator was involved in the dark arts. How deep, we did not know. And how was the DJ involved? We decided to infiltrate this gathering at Bohemian Grove.
Something like this?
No, you didn't see Eyes Wide Shut.
No, sorry.
Who cares? It's probably fine.
No, it's not fine. They'll spot us in 2 seconds with that.
Hey, I like this one.
No, it's not trick or treat. It's a very specific kind of mask.
For an orgy.
Yes, for an orgy.
Well, I just wanted to talk to you about Lucy. She needs to be the senator's date at the Bohemian Grove sacrifice.
I'm just going to a thing for my dad. Some political thing. Boring. What are you doing?
Oh, nothing. Just some gig, a bar mitzvah. It's not an orgy.
I'm losing you, Luz.
It's not the kind of thing that comes
No, I can't hear you, what you just said. I can't hear. I'm going to call you later.
Okay, where should I set up? Oh, right over here in this cage. Sweet. What's that chanting? Nothing. Hey, I'm gonna lock this, okay? Sure. Hey, I'm just gonna stuff a little straw and rolled up newspaper on here. Is that cool? Your party. Shirt on or off? Off.
Oh my gosh, I didn't think it was real, but it is. Listen to that. Father, say anything.
There's a fire.
Okay, put your masks on. We should be able to walk right in.
Minions, worship me. Kneel before me.
Hey, Satan.
10 presidents have announced their candidacy in front of this unholy altar. We celebrate the quest for power. We desecrate this ground with blood and fire.
All right, let's move to the main event. Senator?
Thank you, Master. In the name of Satan, I offer this sacrifice and command the forces of darkness to bestow upon me their infernal power.
Who's ready to boogie tonight? Let's get this party started. No cage can hold these beats.
Now, I'd like for you to ask yourself this question. Why would director Lauren Bouchard include human sacrifice at Bohemian Grove as part of satire? Why is evident hatred and mockery of Jesus Christ displayed so openly by a show that promotes Satanism as a desirable and powerful religion? Why is Jesus put into a cage in the same way that Paul Benassi and other boys recalled their experiences at the Grove? Upon further inspection, this episode showcases their own 40-foot statue where they perform these satanic rituals. Similarly, several eyewitnesses have recorded their direct accounts of seeing actual human sacrifice take place during separate timelines at the real owl statue at the Grove. As we see, Senator Whitehead wears a similar looking mask to this one worn at the Rothschild Surrealist Ball of 1972. The movie Eyes Wide Shut with Tom Cruise was partially based on the Surrealist Ball, where director Stanley Kubrick filmed at Mentmore Towers, an English residence owned by the elite Rothschild family. The statue of Satan in this episode could represent the truth about the real owl statue, that it is inherently satanic and reveals how the Bohemian owl is actually a symbol for evil. If we take a look at the book Theodore West, Image and Impact, we will find written on page 36 an explanation of the cremation of care in relation to the success of the encampment. At the bottom of the page we read, and I quote, "Thus it ceased to be a catharsis, a celebration of the victory over care by the celebration of the encampment, becoming instead an exorcising of the demon to ensure the success of the ensuing 2 weeks." End of quote. Here it seems that the owl is referred to as a demon, meaning that the ritual at the grove could act as a demonstration of worship. But to which demon are they referring to? Could it in fact be Lilith, or is it Moloch? Continuing on with the media and its subtle ties to the grove, shows like Disney Channel's Gravity Falls not only promote witchcraft along with Freemasonry and the Illuminati, but are filled with a plethora of owl imagery. Here are some examples.
Rock bottom. No friends, no family, stuck watching infomercials for whatever that is.
Are you sick of piles of owls constantly blocking your driveway? Well, then you gotta get owl trowel!
Ask yourself this question. Why would the creators of Gravity Falls make main antagonist Bill Cipher an all-seeing, all-knowing, flying and talking Illuminati symbol? The demon is even summoned by a power-hungry boy named Gideon through use of a seance.
You think that combination's safe in your mind, Stanford? We'll see what my new minion has to say about that. Triangulum, Entangulum, Viniforus Dominus Vitium, Viniforus Videntis Armia!
Oh, Gravity Falls, it is good to be back. Name's Bill Cipher, and I take it you're some kind of living ventriloquist dummy? I'm just kidding, I know who you are, Gideon.
What are you? How do you know my name?
Oh, I know lots of things.
Lots of things.
Hey, look what I can do. Deer teeth, for you, kid.
You're insane!
Sure I am, what's your point?
Listen to me, demon! I have a job for you! I need you to enter the mind of Stanford Pines and steal the code to his safe!
Wait! Stan Pines! You know what, kid? You've convinced me. I'm sold! I'll help you with this, and in return you can help me with something I've been working on. We'll work out the details later.
Deal!
Well, time to invade Stan's mind. This should be fun. Remember, reality is an illusion. The universe is a hologram. Buy gold. Buy!
Gravity Falls takes an even darker turn with its nod to the 1990 TV show and crime drama Twin Peaks. This TV show is about the unsolved mysteries surrounding a town called Twin Peaks, similar to the ideas of Gravity Falls. This show follows FBI agent Dale Cooper through a series of bizarre and occultic events. There are interdimensional beings, a black lodge, and owls. This show revolves around owls. As we see in these posters for the show, its main tagline is, "The owls are not what they seem."
You routinely receive various communications, space garbage to decode and examine. They look something like this. It's radio waves and gibberish, Agent Cooper. Till Thursday night. Friday morning, to be exact.
Around the time that I was shot.
The readout took us by surprise. Row after row of gibberish, and all of a sudden, the owls are not what they seem.
The exact roles of the owls remains a mystery in both the old and new adaptations. But one thing is for certain, the owls are the eyes that see everything around the town. Bob, the main antagonist, is an entity from another realm who possesses human beings and feeds on their pain and sorrow. He is really a demon that comes out of a portal in the middle of the woods at Glastonbury Grove. The naming of the grove in the middle of the woods brings familiarity to the idea of Bohemian Grove. The portal, however, opens to this other dimension, an endless red curtain place called the Black Lodge. When we think of any Freemason lodge, each one carries black and white checkerboard tiles throughout its structure. Similarly, the Black Lodge in Twin Peaks has inverted black and white tiles which zigzag throughout its structure. In the main room are 2 pillars, and in every Freemason lodge there are 2 pillars representing duality, with their names being Jachin and Boaz. The Black Lodge is an evil place in Twin Peaks where demonic entities are summoned, in contrast the White Lodge, which is also mentioned in the series.
My people believe that the White Lodge is a place where the spirits that rule man and nature here reside. There is also a legend of a place called the Black Lodge, the shadow self of the White Lodge. The legend says that every spirit must pass through there on the way to perfection.
Upon the realization, if we compare this to Freemason lodges, what could this show be implying? At one point in the show, FBI agent Dale has a dream and ends up in the Black Lodge. He has a conversation with The Arm, one of the main villains, whose method of speaking is in a backwards language.
Is this future, bro? Is this past? Do you know who I am? I am the Arm. And I sound like this.
Backwards language is inverted. Many songs are backmasked or reversed to hide deeper meanings. A lot of these messages are overtly satanic. The uneasy red color palette, matching a shade similar to blood, makes me think there is something much more sinister going on. The Arm even bears a ring with one of the most prominent symbols in all of Twin Peaks, an owl symbol found in a cave called Owl Cave. This owl symbol looks oddly similar to the Freemason symbol. One last thing to note about the owls are that they are the eyes and ears of the Black Lodge that take watch of the town and report back to it. If we think about the implications in relation to real-life society, the elites are the ones watching us and reporting our actions back to their own lodges. Again, this is just speculation. Returning once again to Gravity Falls, the connection between these shows with all of the occult imagery becomes even more prominent when this scene with Gideon occurs.
Oh, different fine.
Even more, the director of Twin Peaks, David Lynch, appears several times on The Cleveland Show as a cameo. In one of his scenes, Lynch shows off his new exercise video, which is literally human hunting of a female in the middle of the woods.
New exercise video. Oh. Run faster! You don't want me to catch you!
And let's not forget this scene which implies pedophilia.
Shut the front door! You're saying you were with 2 girls?
Yep, And if you had both of them together, they were almost age appropriate.
Say, Blood, where you get these?
And they think people would find this funny? The last piece of evidence to boost the claim that these companies genuinely understand the deeper roots of the owl comes from Disney. Disney has a show called The Owl House. The main protagonist's name is Luz, short for the biblical angel Lucifer, who rebelled against God and became Satan. In the show, Luz literally travels from what's called the human realm to the demon realm, which is inhabited by witches and demons. The central location of this realm is the Owl House. Why owls, you may ask? If you remember earlier when I talked about Lilith and how in folklore she would kidnap children and murder them, she also had the ability to transform into a screech owl. If we think about all of the reported ritual killings of children that took place at the Grove, what is even more interesting is that in this show, Owl House, a character by the name of Lilith Clawthorne can transform into a raven beast, and is associated with a show notorious for its owl imagery.
Hi there, I'm Luz Noceda. So this one day, I found a portal and ended up someplace I could have never imagined. This is the Boiling Isles, and this is the Owl House, the best place on the Isles.
Hoot hoot!
That's Hootie.
Hoot hoot!
He's always hanging around.
Oh, jeez!
The Owl House is where I live with
the King of Demons!
and Ida the Owl Lady, the most powerful witch on the Boiling Isle.
The Owl House premieres Friday, January 10th on Disney Channel.
It is strange how the goddess Lilith would hunt down children. And when we think of Fiona Barnett, she claims that the Bohemian Club is in fact a hunting organization. If we retrace our steps to European secret societies such as the Illuminati and Schlaraffia, we now understand the common thread of owl symbolism between the two. But what if I told you there was another organization which predated both of these secret societies and was centered around the Bavarian and Bohemian regions of Europe? This society is called the International Order of Hubertus, which follows the legend of French nobility bishop Saint Hubertus. According to their website, and I quote, "At an early age, Hubert was drawn to one of the pleasurable activities of young nobles, the hunt, called la chasse. In fact, the hunt of animals was the primary activity in which he spent his days. His love for the chase was such that he gradually stopped practicing any religious affiliation, instead spending his days in the fields and woods, trapping and hunting." End of quote. There seems to be an element of truth to Fiona's hunting organization claims, especially when we read further down the page, we find that orders which honored Hubertus were Bavarian and Bohemian in nature. And just like these secret societies, one can only be invited into it by an active member. Even more suspicious, found through more research on their website, they have their own Grand Masters, similar to Freemasonry, and it's officially a knightly order. But the most interesting aspect of this hunting organization is that it stems to America, and the first vestiture of American Knights took place at the Bohemian Club in San Francisco. There have been many individuals who have come forward describing similar experiences with human hunting. Fiona Barnett is not alone in her claims. Some say hunts took place on property for them at Bohemian Grove, or they name a common individual who enjoyed these things such as Dick Cheney or President George Bush. All of these people claim to have had strikingly similar experiences with being raised in generationally abusive families who sold them into MKUltra with the Central Intelligence Agency. As a result of being sexually abused, these people learn to disassociate their trauma by developing multiple personality disorders. A man by the name of J.R. Sweet has spent most of his life trying to warn people about the horrific realities of mind control and human trafficking. He grew up in the Mormon Church and has a testimony revolving around a satanic subdivision within the church itself. Just like Mark Phillips and Kathy O'Brien, Sweet had many terrifying encounters with ventriloquist Alex Houston.
I was raised in a generationally abusive family, a satanic family bloodline, essentially. My family reaches back, as you mentioned, to King Henry VIII. So I was selected because of my ability to dissociate. We were tested as children, tested by a man named Alex Houston to test us for our ability to disassociate. And that took place at my grandfather and grandmother's house outside of Nampa, Idaho at Lake Lowell. And that was that was a pretty traumatic little ordeal there. They had a guy coming out to entertain us kids. And so we were all waiting, and, you know, as little kids, we were excited. This guy had a dummy doll thing that he was going to show us, you know, and do a little show for us. And so he came up the drive finally. It was evening, and he did a little show for us, Alex and, Elmer, I want to say, his dummy. Yeah. And they did this show for us. And then after the show, they said that they wanted to do a test. They wanted to do something with us kids. And so each one of us was taken back into a room there with Alex, and we were tested for our ability to dissociate. And so what that entailed is we were taken back there one by one, first of all, and my sister was first. And they had in the room a box that had a hand in it. It was a severed human hand, and they just opened it. So my sister went back there, and what the thing was, would you dissociate? And so my sister screamed when she went back there, and they showed it to her. And then my older brother, he was taken back, and he screamed when he saw the human hand. He didn't dissociate. And then when I was taken back, I didn't scream. I saw the hand, and I just dissociated from the situation. I was there with my grandfather and his friend. I just dissociated. And so I was taken back. And so I was selected for trauma-based mind control programming sponsored by the Central Intelligence Agency, because there's a lot of people doing it, not just the CIA. The satanic, what I call the satanic elite, are also doing it. Really rich people, what we consider to be the elite, a lot of them, I'm not saying all, I don't know that for sure, but what I witnessed was a lot of them are involved with Satanism and trauma-based mind control. They put their own kids through it. When I first started to remember these things, I had a friend of mine ask me, he said, why would they do this? Why would they want someone like that? Why wouldn't they just have an agent or a soldier do that? It's not all black and white. And if you have a healthy-minded individual who is your agent or soldier, and you tell them, I want you to kill this man who is an enemy of the state, and I want you to kill his wife and his children as well, that individual is going to say, he's going to question that, or she. That individual, if they're a healthy-minded individual, is going to question that. That's immoral. And that's one of the reasons that they want mind slaves. It is because they don't remember, because they will do things such as smuggle drugs, or be used in porn, or be used for blackmail, or be used for assassination, and they won't remember. But it's also because they will do what you tell them to do without question.
Sweet brings up a great point when talking about the need for people to be compliant as a mind slave without questioning the immoral actions they are committing. In another interview, he talks about the most dangerous game, or the hunt, and how he was made to run away from his own grandfather.
So I want to clarify to folks why I'm here in the first place, because these things aren't easy to do. It's not easy to talk about, and it comes with a great amount of risk. And the reason that I'm here and that I'm talking to you today is because I'm a survivor of the Central Intelligence Agency's trauma-based mind control program. It involves trauma, disassociation, abuse, sexual abuse, a lot of very evil and devious things. Really, what it boils down to is it's very illegal, first of all, what the United States government is doing. The Central Intelligence Agency, the White House knows about it. They're involved with it. The Pentagon knows they're involved with it. But it's illegal, it's immoral, and it's unconstitutional, and it should be stopped. And the people have the power to stop it if they know about it. That is what makes it so top secret, is they understand that. And they don't want people to know about it. It gets out in little bits here and there, but they don't want people to know about it. The key to trauma-based mind control is trauma and disassociation. That's why it's called trauma-based mind control, because they use trauma to cause you to disassociate and create in you what is called a multiple personality disorder. And this is what I prefer to call a multiple personality disorder and compared to a dissociative identity disorder, because they create multiple personalities within you. Yes, it is a dissociative identity disorder, but they're creating multiple personalities within you so that they can use you for various things. And you can go about your daily life living as a normal individual in society, and no one would suspect who you are. So it begins with trauma. They traumatize you from the time that you're born. And the most horrid kind of trauma to inflict on a child is sexual abuse by their family. So I was abused by my family, by my father, by my grandfather, by my uncle, various other individuals from the time that I was born. As far back as I can remember sexual abuse in our family. And this is generational. I come from a satanic generational incestual bloodline. And so it's been going on in my family for a very long time. And those are the strongest children to disassociate, is my understanding, are children from satanic bloodlines who have, their family has a history of incestual abuse. I was owned, literally owned as a slave by the Central Intelligence Agency, called a mind slave. MK Ultra, they're seeking out these children, and then they are putting them into the project. And then they are raised under a very scientifically formulated process designed by the CIA. The CIA didn't invent it. They're not the first ones to start doing this. Satanic families have been doing it for a long time, and Satanists. And so it's nothing new, but the CIA has enhanced it greatly to a scientific process. Someone else that I would like to mention who's involved with these things is the Satanic elite. We've discussed them a little bit. I've mentioned them, but these are the elite families, the families that I personally had contact with and witnessed them enduring the same mind control programming I was the Ford family in particular. I can remember they were at the most dangerous game when I was made to play that, when I was made to do that and be involved in that in Oklahoma. And the Hiltons were also there at that game in Oklahoma. The Hilton girls, Nikki and Paris, were both there. I played the most dangerous game with Nikki and Paris, and during the games, one of them had become injured, and I tried to help those girls, and after that, it didn't end well for me or for them. I don't believe. I didn't see what happened to the girls after I was made to run, because my grandfather started shooting at me, or shooting above my head to make me run, because he later told me that Mr. Hilton would have shot me if I had gone to help the girls. And so I was made to run, my cousin and I. Not only do they want children who are multiples who will do anything they tell them to do, they also need these individuals, these children, to never remember what they were made to do. The trauma helps with that, the hypnosis, and then electrocution. They will use an electric taser and hit you with a taser to compartmentalize that memory. And they find a spot on your body, and that's where they're going to hit you forever.
is in that spot. Sometimes they get mixed up and you'll be with someone else, like Bird even messed up once in a while, and he'd hit my left thigh instead of my right thigh.
I knew a lot of these people. I thank God didn't know Bird.
And so they do screw up sometimes, but for the most part, you're supposed to be hit in that specific location.
Just like J.R. Sweet, Kathy O'Brien talks about her personal memories of being hunted in relation to conditioning the mind and traumatizing a victim. Hunting involves politicians, CIA agents, and various elites. In her book, Kathy mentions Dick Cheney and George Bush Sr. as the more notable people who hunted her from an early age. She was stripped completely naked. Wearing just tennis shoes, she was demanded to run. In addition, JR talks about his uncle, who went to observe Britney Spears' programming at Bohemian Grove. What's interesting to note is how he mentions that people who partake in these things have to be very discreet about it so that the members of their family will never know the things they do behind the scenes. Do you believe what he is saying to be true?
My uncle told me while I was putting on my uniform, this is something I want to mention, is that he initially had told me he was going to stay. And he was going to wait for the ceremony to end. He would do something else there in the mountain, and then he'd leave with me. Well, he told me when I was getting dressed, you're going to have to be here alone. I've got to go. He said, I just heard that Britney Spears is being programmed in Bohemian Grove right now, and I want to go catch some of that. And he talked to me about Britney for a while.
You've had a year that would test a lot of people. Illness in the family. A breakup, this spasm of publicity about what happened from Mexico to London.
It was pretty rough, yeah. Yeah, it's kind of weird. Weird. Hello. Oh my goodness. Hello. Ew. Strong Britney. Yeah, it was a weird. Ew, I'm embarrassed. Can we stop this?
Yes, Britney Spears is a trauma-based mindset, and he wanted to go be involved with her programming and her. He's just a sicko, really. He just wanted to be involved with abusing her, and then he talked to me about it. He was like, do you like Britney? Would you like to, have sex with Britney sometime? And I was a young man and I was a mind slave. And I was like, well, sure, I guess so, yeah. And so my uncle left that night and he went to Bohemian Grove. And he ended up having to go home early because his cover had been compromised and something had happened where his family was wondering where he was at, because these people have to do all these things and keep it hidden from their families.
Another story comes from Kathy Collins, someone who grew up near Bohemian Grove in Santa Rosa, California. She had a lot of trauma resulting from the San Francisco Presidio as well as the Grove. Her father sold her into Project Monarch, a sub-project of the MKUltra CIA mind control program, where she was heavily abused throughout the early stages of her life.
I was born in Santa Rosa, California, which was a major center, and a lot of my experiences were in the Presidio and Bohemian Grove.
What's the Presidio?
The Presidio is in San Francisco. And how did I get into this program? It was through my father's connection in the Navy, and he would be considered what some people call a handler. So he was responsible for me being in the program. I also have a brother who was part of the program, who's younger than me. So here are my credentials. Yes, I was sexually abused by my father from infancy. I probably experienced trauma during the fetal stages because that's very typical. I was probably born with PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, so I never really knew what it was like to be quote-unquote normal. So that was a little difficult with recovery because there's no memory of where to go back to. So I was prostituted, so I was used by both men and women. I was experimented upon. I do remember electric shock. I remember being subjected to strobe lights and so forth. There were lots of experiments.
Experimental drugs, I believe.
Experimental drugs, too. I was used in satanic rituals from a very young age, and I remember going through an initiation ritual at age 3 that involved somebody forcing me to drink blood. I remember age 5 being strapped to a slab, and the intent was to take my soul. And then an incident at Bohemian Grove where I was forced to watch a child sacrifice. Because the memories were so horrific, then what I did is I suppressed them, and I had amnesia about my childhood for many, many, many years. And then the memories started to resurface. And because they'd been suppressed for so long, there was a huge reaction.
According to her full testimony, Kathy was carted away in a potato sack by her father and went through a satanic initiation ritual at age 3 where she was forced to drink blood. She vividly remembers attending Bohemian Grove at age 5, where she was stripped naked and tied to a stone altar. 3 hooded figures surrounded her who tried to steal her soul but couldn't break her. Kathy was forced to watch a child sacrifice at Bohemian Grove and only escaped from mind control and abuse because her father died later on in her life. She also claims to have been hunted for sport at the Grove. Here are a couple more survivor testimonies on human hunting rituals which took place at Point Sal and Dick Cheney's estate.
So going back to when I was 15 years old, this was my leading man in high school in Babes in Toyland, and I had some grooming. I was the lead in every single play in my years in high school. His father worked at Vandenberg Air Force Base and eventually for NASA when they moved to Florida. According to my sister, he was also in the elite MK Ultra program. To train us, we were hunted at Point Sal and Guadalupe Beach in the middle of the night, and we were lucky to escape this alive. We had all been at the party at church. There was a hayride that we were all on. Steve S., who openly told me he worked for the CIA, was the driver. He took us up to the Los Alamos entrance of the tunnel. We were all stripped naked and taken to the beach where we were told we had to make it to Guadalupe Beach without being shot or we would not live. We were going to be hunted. We had to swim or climb around the first set of rocks to get to the beach. It was a low tide, so it was fairly safe to swim. The moon was out so we could see, but then so could the people who were hunting us. We all stuck together at first, but the slower ones who couldn't swim very well were shot with a tranquilizer gun, but we thought they were real guns and we were terrified. We used the shadows. We helped each other as much as we could. There was one part of the rocks that we couldn't get around or over without a rope, and DR was tall, so he found a rope and set it up for the rest of us. When we got to Guadalupe Beach, we used the sand to cover up in. We then ran through the sand dunes as a shortcut down the road. We were running down the road naked and had escaped. There were 6 of us who never were shot at that night. Now, it started out as a lot larger group.
First of all, want to say that I give honor to my earthly parents. I do not know everything my parents went through in their lives to bring them to the places that they were. And so I don't ever want to do anything that is dishonoring. And above all, I give all the glory to my Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ of Nazareth, because he is the one who has brought me through. But I do want to say from the start that Freemasonry is a cult. And it damages everyone that is in it and every family member associated with it. They would often do what is called hunting games, which I know is real big with Dick Cheney and his estate. But they would often take as children to a very secluded forest. It was a private estate, and there was a large fence around this forest. And they would strip all of his children naked, and they would tell us to run for our lives. And if we were caught, they were going to kill us. if you didn't do what they said, which many times I didn't, they would shoot a child right in front of you and kill it. And they would say, that is your fault. That's what's going to happen if you don't do what we say. At this one memory, I was older because I was about 16 or 17, and they would line us all up and they would tell us to run. And I ran for my life, and I was hiding in a clump of bushes when I saw this little 5-year-old girl and little 3-year-old boy, a little brother and sister, run past me. The little boy was wearing bright red tennis shoes, but other than that, they were completely naked. I knew they would be caught because they were so little, they didn't know where to go. I jumped out of my hiding space. I grabbed the girl's hand. She had the boy's hand, and we just ran. We ended up running to the back of this property. There was a very large wooden fence there. I started looking at the bottom of the fence because there was a couple of areas where the wood was starting to rot away a little. I started kicking it with my foot. I actually broke several toes because I was barefoot. I kept kicking and kicking with my foot until I could break out a couple of the slats of wood. I dug as frantic as I could with my hands to make a little well in the dirt. I grabbed the children and I shoved them under it. The wood actually cut into their backs as I was shoving them under. I got them both under, and I peeked through a little crack in the wood, and I could see their sweet little naked backsides running. And I told them, I said, don't stop running until you find help. And the last thing I remember was them running in those little tiny red shoes running.
Returning back to Fiona Barnett, her claims about Bohemian Grove and what supposedly transpired between her and Billy Graham will probably upset most Christians upon hearing what she believes happened to her. But Billy Graham was indeed a best friend of Richard Nixon, who we now know attended Bohemian Grove from time to time and recalled eating lunch with Herbert Hoover and Dwight Eisenhower. Graham was also best friends with the Bush family, specifically George W. Bush, who has had many allegations drawn against him by people involved in MKUltra mind control testing relating to sexual abuse. He is also a well-known member of the Bohemian Club and has attended the Grove with his father multiple times. He's even part of Skull and Bones, a secret society club which meets at Yale. Here's what he says when prompted questions about what they do in Skull and Bones.
You were both in Skull and Bones, the secret society. It's so secret we can't talk about it. What does that mean for America? The conspiracy theorists are going to go on.
Sure they are. I don't know. I haven't seen the web.
Number 322?
First of all, he's not the nominee. And, look, I look forward...
Are you prepared to lose?
No, I'm not going to lose.
Are there really great secrets that you know that you can't share with people?
Yeah.
Yeah, there are. And you never write about them.
No.
Maybe at a time in your life that you're like, oh, I'm 90, I'm going to do it.
No.
No, nothing.
Now, I'm not claiming as a fact that people like Ryan Garcia, Paul Benassi, Mark and Kathy, and Fiona Barnett are telling the truth, but I am pointing out the obvious. Bohemian Grove is a common thread between all of these people. So is MKUltra and dissociative personality disorder due to abuse-related trauma. They all make compelling cases. Ultimately, use your own discernment, think for yourself, and make up your own mind. I certainly believe these things to be true, and the next person may disagree. Maybe they force themselves to disagree so they can sleep better at night. What is a fact, though, is that Bohemian Grove exists. Mind control exists. And that people would never put their lives on the line to defend a lie. Lastly, owls are literally hunters. So when we think about Fiona saying that Bohemian Grove is a hunting organization and Hunter S. Thompson's Owl House is where he likes to kill things, this connection doesn't seem too far-fetched. What is also a fact is that owl symbolism is hidden in plain sight within our country, a symbol for possible sacrifices toward Moloch at Bohemian Grove. The owl is directly tied to the Illuminati, 𝗘𝗓𝗡𝗧𝗘𝗡𝗧, Washington, D.C.'s layout, and Disney. It all goes back to Disney. Owl symbolism appears throughout the dwarf's cottage in Snow White and the Seven Dwarfs for a reason. Walter Elias Disney attended Bohemian Grove in 1936, and here is a picture of a couple pages straight from his journal, where we can see the owl statue and the lamp of fellowship drawn over the page. If we look at page 136 of Bob Thomas's book, Walt Disney, an American Original, he mentions what happened during Disney's visit, and I quote, "In 1936, he was invited to the annual encampment of the Bohemian Club, a San Francisco organization of artists and civic figures. The ritual consisted of wining, feasting, and camping out in a redwood grove north of San Francisco Bay. When Walt returned to the studio, he complains of being unable to sleep because of the symphony of snores in nearby tents. He described and reproduced each of the snores to the hilarity of his story men. The result was the snoring sequence in the dwarf's cottage." End of quote. Not only does the dwarf's cottage connect directly to Walt Disney's experience with Bohemian Grove, but the owl symbolism we discussed earlier now verifies this correlation. It seems that Walt Disney had a fascination with Bohemian Grove and the owl, but was never keen on disclosing this information to the public. Its connection is much darker than what meets the eye. Walt Disney has a lot of secrets hidden in his films, theme parks, and more. Join me in Phase 3 as we expose Walt Disney's darkest secret yet.
Whoa!